Hey guys, welcome to the G.I.Joe on the Tabletop. My name is Brad, aka Old Man Morn from the Cast Dice Podcast Network. Now, I posted this video thinking, the introduction video for this series last week, thinking that it was, how should I say, a very niche topic. G.I. Joe on the tabletop, playing with G.I. Joe vehicles on a traditional, for traditional war games, tabletop war games. And I wasn't expecting very many people to watch it. It was more of an experiment to see if I could make short form videos, because most of the videos that I'd made for this channel had been long game videos that, to be honest, not a lot of people were watching a lot of. And so I thought I would experiment by doing short form videos. And I learned very quickly that maybe this isn't as niche as I thought. Maybe there are some of you out there who are as passionate about G.I. Joe and tabletop gaming as I am, because the number of subscribers to this channel literally doubled within a couple of days of my posting the introduction video. So if you are watching, if this is the first time you are experiencing Cast Dice, there is a podcast that goes with this. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy where we go with this. Now, let's get into the first vehicle in this series. And with that, I am going to, of course, talk about the G.I. Joe Amphibious Personnel Carrier, or the APC. When I was a kid, I thought it was the Armored Personnel Carrier. Man, was I wrong. It's the Amphibious one. And man, this toy was cool. Not only did it hold 28 Joes, the toy was amphibious in and of itself. It floated. You could put it in the bathtub and it would go along. I may have done that once or twice. Now, you might think, Brad, this isn't exactly the most glorious or famous or even infamous G.I. Joe vehicles. Why start there? I chose to start with the APC for the simple reason that when I started this project, the very first vehicle that I started with was the APC. In fact, I liked it so much, I made two. Now, keeping in mind that a lot of the games that I plan on playing with these toys that I'm going to be talking about in this video, I'm planning to play Bolt Action, which is a World War II game by Warlord Games. It's a 156 scale / 28 millimeter toy soldier game that often involves using transports in a lot of armies. Transports, trucks tend to be quite good. When I was building my first vehicles, though I wanted to start with the Mobat, and I will talk about the Mobat very soon as it was one of my first vehicles, I thought I would start with something that was basic, sort of a workhorse vehicle, and that, of course, is the truck, if we're talking about Bolt Action. And G.I. Joe's truck, the APC. Now, let's talk about the APC as a vehicle. The APC itself holds 28 Joes. If we look inside, you will see that there are 2 rows of 8 sitting along the inside. The figures actually sat in custom seats that fit their G.I. Joe legs with bended knee. And there was a very cool seatbelt that went over the top, a strap that went over the entire row. And then there was 2 rows of 8 and then foot pegs for 10 guys to stand in the middle. Now, that meant that you could actually put the lid back on the NPC or the APC, as is demonstrated there at the roof, and the back actually have, and you can see it in the upper left hand of this picture, the bumper on the back actually pulled and became a handle. And it was constructed in such a way that you could actually stick your Joes in there and hold it and carry it around like that, and they would stay in place. Now, if you do your maths, that only adds up to 26 Joes. There's still space for 2 more, and that's the 2 in the driver's seats. The driver and the passenger at the front. Now, the guy running shotgun. Now, those were a little more loose, and I did figure out that those Joes rattled around a little bit. And as I tried to take care of my toys as a kid, I didn't always place models in there or figs in there when I was carrying them around. But I did absolutely put it or use this vehicle as a toy carrier when I would go to my friend's house. It is way cooler than that little ammo pack that you would put on your hip that would hold 6 Joes, in my opinion, because, heck, this was a cool vehicle. It was big. It was beefy. It was just awesome. But let's talk about the APC in general. When it first came out, of course, it came out in dark green. It had that cool camouflage lid, and it's got its cannon on the top. Now, we are going to talk about that cannon in just a second. There was a mail-away version pretty soon after the vehicle's initial release. This vehicle did come out in 1983. It was the second collection of G.I. Joe vehicles. And man, compared to the vehicles that came in the first collection, this thing was huge. Now, I know the G.I. Joe base and the Sky Striker also came out in the same run. However, those weren't toys that I would be playing with every day. This was sort of the big kahuna of the toys that I would put on the tabletop because it moved a lot of Joes around when I was playing. It was just great for having my figures in it. They could jump out and go on adventures. But anyway, this is the first appearance of the APC in Larry Hama's A Real American Hero G.I. Joe comic by Marvel. You can even see it on the cover. There it is. But yeah, it was in there. If you do look at this issue and you dig it up, you'll find that its tire placement tends to shift quite a lot over the course of the comic. It's very interesting and kind of entertaining if you're looking at it. But of course, in this, the G.I. Joes use it to get to the battle, and they're in a race against Destro and a bunch of Cobra paratroopers to intercept and capture Cobra Commander and Baroness. A great issue, a lot of fun, old school G.I. Joe. Now, the APC is one of those G.I. Joe vehicles, particularly those of the early run of the toys, that often married up with a more, with a real vehicle, a real military vehicle. In this case, and I am going to read it, it is a Finnish armored amphibious personnel carrier. Sound familiar? Called the Sisu Pasi XA-180. Now, this is fully armored, which the APC clearly is not. The APC, of course, has that soft skin on the back. And in the comic, the very first issue it appears, it's one of the only times where you'll see those sides, those canvas sides on the back, actually rolled up and guys are firing out of the back. Now, if we look at the amphibious personnel carrier's blueprints, I think there's a couple of items of note if you are looking to represent this vehicle on the tabletop. First of all, let's look at the gun. Now, I did say I would mention the cannon. It's got the 50 millimeter single fire auto control cannon. Now, that is what it says on the box. That is what it says on the blueprint. However, if we go to Marvel Comics Order of Battle, there they have the stats for the APC. And if you look at its armament, it says 105 millimeter recoilless automatic cannon with 225 rounds of exploding ammo, which doesn't match, clearly doesn't match at all. What's interesting is it also has, if you look at the speed, it mentions 2 crew and 28 troops capacity, meaning it holds 30, which the actual toy held 28. I'm not sure if that was just the Marvel guys being a little creative. I'm not sure how much Larry Hama was involved with the Order of Battle for vehicles, because I know that the Order of Battle for characters matched Larry with often a little bit more, matched Larry's work on the file cards with a little bit extra thrown in there to match the Marvel comics. I believe that may have also been written by Larry. I will have to research that. I may have made that up. Anyway, if we go back, I do love these G.I. Joe blueprints from the 80s because they have such cool details in them. I mean, obviously you get the important parts of the vehicle. If kids are wondering what things are, I mean, you see the engine intake, the oil intercoolers, and all of that, the climate control system, yada, yada, yada. What I love for this particular blueprint was, if you look at number 17, it really does lean into that amphibious nature to the vehicle, and it actually has a propeller hatch door. And of course, if we also look at the 16, the watertight hull entry hatch, I mean, it really does lean into that idea that this is an amphibious vehicle. And number 10, the torpedo-resistant hull armor. Now, when I first printed this vehicle, it was printed by a friend of mine in the United States, and he printed it for me in PLA. Now, I very quickly switched to resin, and I did order a bunch of PLA vehicles in my initial run. I have now entirely switched to resin, and I actually got rid of almost all of my PLA vehicles. Sans these little guys. I absolutely love this vehicle. Now, I did experiment a lot with 3D printing, with PLA in general when I first started with this. As you can see, that is white. And though the vehicles came white, that is actually after I put a heavy, heavy prime of white spray paint over the top. I scraped a lot of the excess lines off the sides and the misprints off the sides of these vehicles when I first got them. You can still see some of the imperfections there. I left this picture up on purpose to show you that. You can see some lumps and bumps along the sides. But then I overprimed it again and overprimed it again to really wash out a lot of the mold lines, or not the mold lines, the print lines that appeared with PLA that some people actually, well, most people don't actually quite enjoy about the material. And you can still see those lines on the front of this APC. A lot of not the horizontal, the diagonal, you can see the striations in the PLA. And this, unfortunately, shows up quite a lot. Now, this is the first APC that I started working on. Very quickly thereafter, I started work on the second. Now, I did intentionally... it's funny that I chose the APC to go first because I wasn't planning to lean into the chipped whitewash look so much with my vehicles, but because I was trying to hide the PLA, you can see an early example of a Soviet tank, 156 scale tank there, and that is one of the first sponging experiments that I had to show sponge chipping of whitewash. Now, when we go to this, I leaned into it a little bit heavier, and I tried to really focus on the edges, and I will do a video because I've had a lot of people ask how I do my chipping. I got it all from Patch, the very talented painter from the Bolt Action Alliance. If you have not checked out his stuff, you should. He's on Paint All the Minis. His name is Patch. Just search Patch under Paint All the Minis and you will see tons of beautifully painted models. Now, if we look back at this, I wanted to get rid of those striations. So I used some green stuff and thinly layered it on and then scraped it as flat as I could. You can see that on the left. And yes, I think that looks a lot better. But that process did take a lot of time. And for a lot of vehicles that have much larger surfaces that are on a diagonal slant, that is just too hard to do. I tried to do it with a Wolverine tank and it just did not work, which is why I shifted to resin. Now, you can fix PLA, quote unquote, fix PLA, so that isn't an issue. And I found that, as I said before, sponge chipping really does sort of hide the worst sins of the printing material. But yeah, overall, in the end, I am quite happy with how these turned out. But I am not sure I'll be using PLA for many of my G.I.Joe vehicles going into the future. You might see a G.I.Joe base at some point. It's great for super large models. I don't have a flag yet, but we'll see. Now, here we go. Those are my two APCs in all their glory next to a standard 156 scale Sherman tank. That is just a scale picture. And once again, here is a regular 156 scale or 28 millimeter soldier. That is a bolt action Soviet commando. Now, if you compare the tank and the infantry to this APC as it is represented in the G.I. Joe comics and in the cartoons, my APCs are a little bit small. That is sort of one of the criticisms that a lot of people have for 156 scale in general, because, I mean, 148 is probably a more realistic scale for vehicles against 28 millimeter infantry models. However, wanting to stay within the sort of confines of the bolt action gaming universe, so to speak, so that my vehicles could be used in a standard game of bolt action against someone else's World War II force, I was sort of forced to shrink it down a little bit. I mean, it's still a beast. It's huge. And if you have two of them on the tabletop, they take up a lot of landscape. So I'm not overly concerned about the fact that they are on the small scale. However, it is what it is. If you want to represent this in bolt action, I'm personally at least going to be trying out, there's an Easter bolt action event coming up, where I will be fielding my G.I. Joes for the very first time. And I will be using the APC as a Mack truck, which is sort of the supersized truck in the Armies of the United States book. Now, it isn't the best representation. It is a soft skin. It doesn't have armored size. But I figured given that huge canvas on the back, canvas roof on the back, it kind of works. Now, that vehicle only holds 24 people instead of the 28, but I figured it's close enough. And so I was looking at the LVT to give it an amphibious nature, and sort of, I know it's a tracked vehicle, but the APC is supposed to be slow. But in the end, I ended up going for the truck with the, because the truck also has the option to take a heavy machine gun on the top with a 360-degree pintle mount. So rather than having an autocannon, given that there was some discrepancy about what that gun is anyway, I just thought I would use the heavy machine gun on the Mack truck. Now, I hope you have enjoyed this video. This is the very first, as I said. We will be getting into more depth going into the future about some of the vehicles and some of the characters. I did want to start basic, though, as I'm still figuring out the technology and what I'm doing as I make these videos. As always, if you have not subscribed, if you want to click below, if you want to see more of these videos going into the future, or if you have any tidbits, pointers, if you are a YouTube content creator and you have some ideas on how I can improve these videos, or if you just want to give me some ideas on something that I'm doing that you think I might do better, please comment below. I would love to hear from you. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please excuse as we are still figuring out this medium, but we will get there in the end, and I hope you have enjoyed what we brought to you today. Goodbye.